All right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. My name is Leah Vansberg, and I am a PhD candidate in higher education and policy studies at the University of Kentucky. My current role as employment is the academic coordinator. Working with students who have COVID situations, whether they are exposed to COVID or they have tested positive for COVID. So that's my current position, but I've previously worked with faculty development here on campus, and that's kind of where the birth of this workshop came from last year. Obviously, um, that didn't happen, so we pivoted a little bit and we discussed the importance that still lingered of online teaching and learning, since most of us have had an experience with that over the past year. And so kind of to set the tone for the workshop, I'm not going to talk at you for the next 70 minutes. That's not my goal. I would really love for you all to participate. I've got some discussion questions that I'm going to share with you all, and I hope that you can capture those, whether you add them to your own Google Drive or you download them when we're done. I hope you can capture those and you can all take away something. So that's a little bit about me and kind of what to expect today. Here's a short little outline. So I really want to hear your experiences over the past year. We have definitely all had unique and valuable experiences, and I hope that we can learn from each other. While I've pulled together some best practices for us to talk about and some strategies, I'm not the only expert in the room today. You all have had experiences, and you have questions, and I'm sure that you'll be able to help each other as well. And so then we're also, we're going to go over those strategies that I've pulled together. And then to kind of wrap things up, I want to make sure that you leave here with something that you can implement in your own course. So if there's something that that you've had difficulty implementing over the past year, or something that you're like, oh, hey, I would like to do this moving forward, then I hope that we can kind of work together to figure out how we can do that. So to get us started, and since this is a relatively small group, I think I'm just going to leave us together, if that's okay with you. I think that we will see some value in us all kind of hanging out here together instead of breaking into smaller groups. So we're going to answer these questions here. I think that if we talk about the successes that we've all had in online teaching, whether that was over the past year where we've made pivots due to COVID, or maybe you had experience online teaching before last March, I want to hear about those successes. But then it's also, I'm sure that we've all faced some challenges, right? Whether that was last spring when we had to pivot, or maybe you had to teach a class this fall or spring that you'd never taught online before. So I think talking about the challenges is important. And then what concerns do you have lingering that maybe haven't been addressed over the past year? And then I also want to hear what your goal is for today. Why are you here? What brought you here today? And that'll kind of we're also going to come back to this at the end of the session so we can make sure we address anything that we don't address throughout the presentation. So I'm going to switch our screen and I'm going to drop a link here. And if you have the capability to open this document, if you're on a computer that you can open another window, feel free to go ahead and open that. You should be able to get in. Looks like if you jumped in there. And so what I would love to do is for us to just maybe take a few minutes, and if you can type in the chat, if you can type in the box, like you can just click here and you can just start typing, that your success stories right here. So you can start doing that yourself. And I think if we just take a few minutes, maybe I don't know, what do we think? 5 minutes to kind of do this. Um, write down what you want to share, and as you can see, they're anonymous for the most part, I think. And then we can come back together in about 5 minutes. So feel free to type. If you don't have access to the document, or you aren't sure about typing in the document, also feel free to, you can drop them in the chat. You can say, your success was or your challenges are, and you can drop that in the chat and I can paste them into the document for you. And as you can see where people are typing, so you hopefully don't have too much trouble stumbling over each other. There's some great stuff happening here, guys. Thanks for sharing all these things. So we'll take about 2 more minutes. You guys are dropping some great stuff in the document, and then we'll kind of we can unmute our mics and we can kind of chat about these things. All right, if you are still typing, please keep going. Do not feel like you have to stop. But I feel like let's just start with the good. Let's start with some successes that you all have typed here. Does anybody want to share more about what they wrote? I like what someone wrote here about being intentional about being organized and upfront and sending lots of reminders. Reminders have also helped me and my students. I was worried about being over, but yeah, Catherine.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Leah, for leading this session. I'm also on the education committee of ASA. So this is an exciting conversation to see happen. That was my contribution there. I this past fall taught intro for the third fall in a row, and actually ended up somehow being more organized this time around. I guess due to really wanting to be intentional about and explain thoroughly and multiple times to students what to expect, what's expected of them, timelines, expectations, all of that. So I think within an online setting, you just have to be even more upfront, and of course allow for, extensions and floating deadlines and things like that. But I think students really appreciate um, that extra, putting in that extra work at the very beginning of the semester and before the semester starts, so they kind of have a roadmap.
Yeah. I appreciate that you shared that, Catherine. So Catherine and I have both taught the same course, Intro to Appalachian Studies, but I've taught it the past 2 summers in an 8-week format. So it's a little different in the 8-week format, but I've noticed that the more work I put up front, the better it seems to go during this semester, which obviously takes time away from our own, lives and free time. But I also noticed that too, Catherine. Thanks for sharing that. Would anyone else like to share about a success that you typed here, or one that you have that you didn't type on the screen? Yeah, Kathy?
I was able to, after fall semester, where in some of my classes, a good percentage of the students wouldn't have their video on during Zoom. Excuse me. I started out this semester just really talking about community and building the community in the class, and why we would want to have our videos on so that we could see each other and stuff like that. And actually what I did is I had them brainstorm ideas of what it would feel like to be, or what kinds of behaviors would be good for each of us to do while we're in our Zoom meetings. And I've noticed that in my classes, there's rarely any student without their video on now, and they're not engaged, and rarely any who are not engaged, which has changed the whole feeling, I think. I know for me as the instructor, and I'm sure for the students, we feel like we're in a classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that you shared that. I know the camera thing is a big debate. And when I have students who have COVID, I've had some students who they want to try to be present, but then their professors are not flexible with the camera and make it more like it feels more like surveillance than community. So I really like your approach to that about community and engagement. And I think that might, as we go through the next, we have an hour left together. I see that somebody is concerned about getting students to work together and getting students to feel like a community. So maybe we can kind of touch on that more as we go through. So thanks for sharing that. Um, I don't, if this person doesn't want to share, they definitely don't have to, but how have you learned better to communicate with students? How has that happened? How's that evolved? And what could we learn from it? Like I said, if you're uncomfortable sharing, that's fine too.
Well, that was me.
Okay.
And it was sort of like the previous person. I I communicate with my students. The morning that we meet, I send a reminder to them. I remind, and in class, I remind them each day that we meet of what the assignment is. I've actually made my class so that all homework is due Saturday by 11:30 p.m. and all exams that we do open on a Sunday at 8 a.m. and closes on a Wednesday at 11:30 p.m. So anytime we have exams, that's the time frame, and anytime we have weekly assignments, then it's Saturday. So when I meet with them on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, at the end of class period, I spend just a couple of minutes, show them our learning system to show them where the assignment is, remind them what is due on Saturday and how to post it. And then, like I said, Monday mornings, Wednesday mornings, and Friday mornings, I send them a quick email reminding them of class and the Zoom link and stuff like that. And then, to be honest, on Sunday, I'm grading. And I send them, those that didn't turn in an assignment, I send them an email that says that reminds them that they didn't do the assignment and that I accept it late. So those are some of the ways that I've communicated better. And this is something that is an advantage of Zoom, that sometimes in face-to-face, I don't have that, because sometimes I have a hard time remembering students' names, but in Zoom, their names are right there. So that's one little advantage for me personally.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I actually only personally know a few of you, but I can see your names here, and I can call on you, and I think it's really nice to be able to provide that like personal touch. So I love that. Thanks for sharing all that, Kathy. All right. So let's move in the interest of time. I want to make sure that we get to everything and then are able to circle back. We're going to come back to this page and address anything that we didn't address throughout the program or about throughout the workshop. So technology differences. I love that someone brought this up. Some have access to a camera, some don't. Some have Wi-Fi challenges, which is so true of all of our students. Even students, we're here in Lexington, Kentucky, with the University of Kentucky, and I've even had issues with students who are in COVID situations who maybe typically came to campus or they went to a coffee shop, and they've had unstable internet even in their homes here in Lexington. So we have, and then our students in rural areas, if your college is in a rural area, or you have students who are home for the semester, which I've encountered a lot. If a student was able to make a fully online schedule, then maybe they didn't have to pay for their room and board to come physically to campus. So I know that that's a challenge for a lot of students. So I'm glad that someone brought that up. Exhaustion and anxiety learning. I think that this is huge. On the educator side, a lot of these things here are student centered, but I think that we would be remiss not to think about our own exhaustion and our own frustrations and anxieties, because it's hard. You're essentially learning new pedagogy, and you're adjusting your assignments. I know, especially for our place-based courses, we might have had assignments that are more difficult to transition online, and that can be really difficult. So I think that that's something that we can recognize, for our time together, that if you've been exhausted and anxious and frustrated about the process, I think we should acknowledge that, and that it's totally valid to feel that way. Engagement with students during Zoom. I know faculty here have had that frustration. How many of you, and I guess you could raise your hand or drop it in the chat, how many of you are doing synchronous meetings either on Zoom or another video platform? Amanda, Kathy, Catherine. Okay. So a few of you. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect, guys. Oh, so it looks like maybe most of you are dealing with a synchronous situation. Okay. Yeah, and that definitely, I think, creates different challenges than asynchronous. Yeah, thanks, guys. And we can talk more about how we can, engage. And I think it would be great for you all to share with each other what you have learned from those situations. I'm going to lower your hands, folks. Oh, perfect. All right. So, yeah, we can definitely address that more as we go through. Oh, wow, this sounds super challenging, and I know that you are probably not alone. Whoever typed this in our document here, currently teaching in the classroom virtually and asynchronous simultaneously. Wow, that's a lot. Was that Jamie?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. You're good, Jamie.
I'm a high school teacher in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And one thing I would point out, most of my students are 14 and 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring that up, because we were talking about other challenges a few minutes ago. And one of the, many challenges, but several of the things that we've been concerned about when we went virtual was trying to get students online, because many family members lost jobs, and the school provided the school bus where we sent food out to homes and delivered, and to take hotspots so students that lived in the rural areas could have internet access. So I just wanted to add that there, because I think that's probably a little bit different from what a high school teacher would experience versus a college teacher. But currently, we're back in school, what we consider 100%. But families that chose to stay virtual were allowed to do so. But we currently, in that circumstance, we're talking about stress and things of that nature. It's been very difficult to provide lesson plans in the classroom and virtually teach at the same time, and trying to make those connections and discussions and all the things that take place in a regular classroom setting. And then at the same time, we have students that still have internet issues. So, of course, providing asynchronous teaching is more difficult overall with all three happening at the same time.
Yeah. Wow, Jamie.
Yeah.
Yes, that's I think your K-12 issues, and I was originally trained as a K-12 agriculture teacher, and so I taught high school before coming back to do my doctorate. And I can't imagine what you're going through right now. I know a lot of my teacher friends are really stressed and frustrated, but um, hopefully there is light at the end of your tunnel there. And so if there's questions that you have about specific K-12 things, hopefully we can brainstorm with you and make sure that you get something out of this today too. I'm glad you're here. All right. Attendance issues, I think that's a challenge for us all. For sure. So let's see. I'm going to scroll down to the concerns. You guys feel free to continue typing in the chat. Absolutely. Love that. So we're Zoom meetings when possible. Um, Yeah, I think that this is this comes up, this concern about connectivity and comfort is kind of part of the camera debate as well, about, requiring students to have their camera on and having the connectivity and the comfort. I don't know if you all have been in a big Zoom meeting or even a Teams meeting. Is that the more cameras you have on, the more issues. And I worked with Upward Bound at the Kentucky State University over the last summer, and even though the students had hotspots, those hotspots were not necessarily super reliable, and they had connectivity issues and couldn't turn their cameras on, and then I think that it creates issues there. So totally valid concern, and we can definitely probably not solve that today, but we can definitely talk more about it. Academic dishonesty, I think that is a valid concern and one I have faced myself. I will tell you, I pivoted an assignment. My weekly assignment, my first semester teaching online, was a weekly quiz. It was really informal, really. I mean, it was really just to gauge their learning and check for understanding and make sure they did their work. It was really not, it was low stakes. And then they were straight up blatantly Googling the answers because they would be wrong. And I would Google it and I would get their answer. And so then I pivoted. I was very frustrated and I pivoted and I did discussion posts, and I found that to be really successful. So we can definitely talk more about academic dishonesty as well. Some goals sense of community online, I think we can definitely work on that. And I think that hearing from how others have worked on that will be helpful for this goal here, and to be refreshed. Well, I hope that this kind of is a refresher. I also love that you guys worked ahead. I love that you just did that. Technology in the classroom. We're going to touch on that, and this is part of what I hope you guys can leave with, is maybe a list of new technologies. So I am going to flip back to our presentation. I'm going to check my chat first, see what you guys are chatting about. Yeah, Ron, thank you. I'm glad you all are here and that we're kind of being able to have this discussions. How to encourage engagement outside of the classroom. Yeah, we can definitely chat more about that. And I'm hoping that you all are going to have, because I have not taught synchronously. So I hope that those of you who have can chat more about that. Yeah, Amanda, I'm with you. I'm with you. I agree. All right, folks. Well, this is great. Keep it up. You guys continue to chat with each other in the chat, and I will try to continue to watch it as we move through. I just have I don't have a ton here because I want to continue conversations, and also as I go through these, I want to note that just because I've listed something here as a best practice, if you've tried it and it didn't work for you, that means nothing. Or if it's something that you've tried that worked and it's not on the list, that doesn't mean it's not also effective. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I hesitated about leaving these because I felt like they were pretty simple, but I did leave them just because I have learned, especially here with number one, that our learning management tools can sometimes be much more robust than we know. And also, I know that here at UK, ours um, is continuing evolving. We're continuing to add tools like for accessibility and content. So I think that it's important to know your learning management system and other online learning tools. And maybe your school or your organization didn't have robust learning management systems or learning tools pre-pandemic, but now maybe they've adopted new things. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is to find out if there are workshops offered by your university or school. And if there are not, then I think that looking for workshops by your learning management system can also be helpful. I think depending on the learning management system you use, I know in higher ed, Canvas and Blackboard are really popular, but I think it's a little more varied with K-12 schools. There seem to be a lot more options. So I think that you kind of have to just find your resource for your learning management tool and figure out how to do that. Also, if you don't have access at your university or school, I also have found Twitter. If you're on Twitter, Twitter has a great academic community. If you are not on there, or if you're on Twitter and you're not following the academic community, I think it's really helpful. And it's definitely where I've learned a lot over the past year as well. If your school has a teaching and learning center, get hooked up with them. So I used to work for our center here, the Center for the Enhancement of Learning and Teaching. And I know that everybody in that office is really caring and understanding. And there's definitely a specialist for each kind of online learning challenge. So we had each other to rely on. So if you aren't sure if your university has a teaching and learning center, I would check that out. And if they do, get connected with their sorry, I'm reading the chat and trying to talk at the same time, guys. I would definitely get connected, like if they have a listserv or a newsletter, get connected with that so that you can make sure you stay up to date. So if those are things you haven't done, I highly recommend that, even if this isn't your first time teaching online, to go back and do that. So it looks like we're chatting in the chat that we're doing lots more communication with students outside the platform, phone calls. Yeah. Do you feel like that's something that you guys are doing? Already my higher ed folks feeling like they're doing that as well, or is that looking like more like a K-12? higher ed. Okay. Okay. So this is not a unique problem to K-12. Okay. Interesting. I'm gonna let you guys keep typing, but I'm gonna flip to the next slide. So these are some course design things, and I've pulled these together from my own experiences, my own education background, and from working with faculty over the past year in designing their courses, as well as some resources like the Chronicle and Inside Higher Ed, which I'll talk about more later. Creating visually appealing layouts, which depending on your learning management system, this may be more or less difficult. And I know that Canvas, you can create some really nice pages, but it does kind of have a little bit of a learning curve. So learning how to do that, and that's a great way if you have a teaching and learning center to get connected. And the use of modules. I love modules, and they might be called something slightly different in your learning management system, but in Canvas, they're called modules. And basically it's, so for my 8-week class, we had 8 modules. And I themed them, and then I ordered them, and all the material, I tried to make sure every week the material was in the same order. And it was, I intentionally ordered it and intentionally let the students know that it was ordered in the way I wanted them to do it. So I would put, a reading that I want to do, and then a video, and then a podcast maybe. And then the quiz was always, or the discussion post was always at the end. And organizing topics and materials intuitively, and that was part of my module organization. Another thing that I think is helpful is staggering due dates. One thing I noticed, if I left the due date for, let's say, a discussion post that had a required component to respond, if I didn't make one due before the other, the in the last 30 minutes, it was like total frenzy, and I didn't feel like I got the same quality of interaction between the students. So I think that staggering those due dates and making sure that you're encouraging the commenting and going in and commenting yourself, I think is also really helpful. And that helps encourage students to comment on each other's things. I just mentioned that when I organized material, I had podcasts, and I had a film, and I think that's something that in online instruction, because we're not in the classroom and we can't vary things as much, even if we're synchronous, we kind of lose some of our capabilities. And I think that we're fortunate to have a lot of really great resources like podcasts and films and documentaries that we can show to our students. So I think tapping into those has been really beneficial. Like, I think Hillbilly is now on Hulu, and so that's something. And our students actually have access to it for like $4.99, and if they had never signed up for it before, you can get a free month. So it's very low cost. And I also will tell you, I didn't have a textbook for my class, so the only cost they would have had is getting that. And if they let me know that they were having, access trouble, we would definitely work on that. And then most podcasts and things are free. So you don't have any costs associated with those either. Something else I found fun was also using Spotify. I made a Spotify playlist of different music when we talked about music and culture. And then they were able to listen to the songs, and they wrote a reflection on the music. And that was one of my favorite things that we did. And just, and then we would weave music throughout, and when we talked about labor, I had them listen to a couple of songs and include that. Uh, Jamie, I think you have a really good point here, that older students are caring for their younger students, and I don't necessarily think that's exclusive to our high school students. I think our college students who are at home right now might be experiencing that as well. Low stakes discussion assignments, I think, are a really great way to support engagement and assess learning. I've had really great luck with those. And this was in an asynchronous classroom, but I think that you could make it work whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. And incorporate various technologies, which you guys have already started a list. So I want to go back to that for a minute because I hope that you all can actually leave here with a list. So where I'm going to go back here, I'm going to reshare the link so that if you hopped off of it, that you can jump back in. Films and reflections, perfect. I don't know what this is, so we should talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to type in some technologies that you have used. I'm going to type in those things I just said so that way if you want to capture this, whether if you can add it to your own Google Drive if you go up here. Mine says move because it's in my Google Drive, but up here you can add it to your own Google Drive if you are in Google Drive, or after we're done, stay in this document and you can download it for yourself so you can kind of save this. So I'm going to let you guys type in here for a minute. Let's do 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we can talk about these. And if there's something that you haven't used and you want to ask about it, we can do that, okay? You guys are typing furiously. I love it. Well, so what I can do, maybe, yeah. I'm just going to clean these up a little bit, guys, so we can stay together. Okay, it kind of looks like people have stopped typing, but if you have more to add, please continue. I want this list, to be as robust as you all want it to be, and so that everybody can leave here with maybe something new to use when they get back to their classrooms. All right. What technology have you used? Okay, so this first question up here, I hope that that's what this list is going to do for us. Okay. I do have a question. If whoever typed this, Amanda, was that you? Would you tell us more? I've never heard of this. Tell us more about this.
Perusal, it's an account that they can get, and it's like an e-reader that they all read the same text, and then they can all make comments on it. They can see each other's comments and respond to each other's comments. So it's a way of having that discussion asynchronously that I found they really did comment a lot more when using Perusal than when I had them do discussion boards.
Interesting.
So I thought that was very interesting. And the way it works is they get their account and they have to purchase the electronic text, but it's cheaper than purchasing it through the bookstore. And like I said, they're all reading the same thing, and they all get to see what everyone else is commenting on, and they can ask questions. And I had students who asked questions about certain parts of the reading, and then other students would voluntarily come in and try and answer their questions.
That's fantastic, which is our goal, right? For them to engage with each other like they would in class, hopefully.
Yeah. So I only used it once because I didn't know if it was going to work or not, and then it ended up working pretty well, and I wish I'd honestly had them do more with it.
Okay. So fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear about that. I don't know when the next time I'm going to be lined up to teach a class because currently my role does not include teaching, but that sounds like something that I would be interested in. Definitely. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Films and reflections. I love film reviews and reflections. I've also used things. Anthony Bourdain did a piece. If you haven't seen it, I think there's actually 2 episodes, an older episode and then a more recent episode where he was in Appalachia. And so I used the more recent one. It was also the the most accessible because you could access it if you had a, your parents' cable or satellite login, or your own login. You could also access it on Hulu. You could pay for it individually. I think it was like $2.99 if you just paid for the episode, like on Amazon, or I think you could also pay for it on YouTube, possibly. So there were a lot of ways to access that content, and that's also a situation where I could have worked with a student who didn't have that access. But even something like that was really great during our culture module. So I think you have a lot of options to kind of go outside of the box a little bit when they have access, and a lot of students, I feel like, have some sort of streaming service, or they can borrow a friend's as well. So I think that's great. And like I mentioned, Spotify playlist. And there's a student account, and that's actually, you can get Spotify and Hulu for $4.99, which is super cheap. So if they don't already do that, I just dropped the link for my students to do that. And then they get access to 2 course materials for $4.99 a month. And then they can discontinue it if they don't want to pay for it after our time in class together is over. Google Docs and slides like we're doing right now. I was hoping to kind of model a couple things for you all. And this is something that Dr. Kathy Kern here at the University of Kentucky, who's our Associate Provost for Teaching and Learning. She teaches a massive class, and she does in person, typically does a lot of things like this so that they can interact with each other. And I think that it's a great way to do this, but also I used Canva, which I guess I could drop in here too. If you haven't used Canva, I love it. I paid for the pro version for a month to just try it out. And you can actually, even without the pro version, get a lot done. So if you would like to up your slide game, I highly recommend Canva. But Google Slides is also, you can find lots of free templates if you haven't used the free templates. So I love that. Loom. I have not used Loom. Whoever dropped that in, would you want to talk more about that?
Yes, I learned how to use Loom from one of our technology specialists at the beginning of the pandemic last March. And what we were struggling with was putting lectures and lessons online for asynchronous learners. And it's just simply a website that allows you to video whatever is on the screen. So it doesn't matter what website or whatever that you're interacting with on the computer screen, it will record all your interaction, and then it saves it in a location that you can upload it to Canvas, and it's completely free, and you'll always have the library of your videos. One thing that I've used it for is even just to send small messages to a student, to teach that student how to access modules in Canvas, as an instructional way too, as well, as a lecture piece in the classroom.
Yeah, cool. That sounds really awesome. And you said it was free?
Yes, I think there's probably a version that you pay for, but
yeah,
for basically what we do, it works well.
Perfect. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. Does someone want to share more about Jamboard? Tell us what that is. I've never used that before either.
I can share. It's hi, I'm Unina.
Hi.
I teach across, so K through 12 theater and also in the university theater. And it's a platform where students can basically go and it's more for ideation or like sharing ideas, or sometimes I've used it to create mind maps in class, so as a review tool. But basically, there's a link that students can go to, and they can all visit the same kind of group of documents together, and they can add links in real time, pictures, photos, post-its, annotations. Um, yeah, so I found it useful.
Awesome. That sounds really fun. good way to get a different kind of engagement going there. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Polls Everywhere and Kahoot. Polls Everywhere I've used before, and it is it's a great way to do like engagement questions, kind of judge learning during a synchronous class for sure, and that can be used whether you're online or in person. Kahoot is I have never been in a classroom where Kahoot was not a hoot. Like everybody that even when I've been in classes as a graduate student, and we did Kahoot, it was always really fun. So I love Kahoot. If you haven't used it, it's free. You can create an account and you can make quizzes, and it's got a fun little beat to it. It's really cool. Does anybody else want to share a technology? I want to flip back and so we can be mindful of our time. Ron mentioned Adobe Spark has a number of classes. Okay, cool. All the Adobe products are also probably something we haven't touched on. But I love this list. If you, like I said, if you want to add this document to your own Google Drive or copy the whole document when we're done, please make sure you do that. I'm going to flip back to our slideshow. These are just some things, and these are kind of more how, and I dropped this link down here, and I can copy it for you if you'd like. This was an article from the Chronicle, is where a lot of these came from. I felt like it was a really as a extensive as a list as we could come up with in one slide. And then I've done a lot of these things myself as well. So this is one of my own here. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to go that far. So posting weekly announcements is something that I've done, and that's something that actually Catherine, I modeled after Catherine. Thanks, Amanda. I'm really glad that you got to come.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris.
One thing that I have found really useful is I have a daily assignment sheet. It's like a page that I put up on we use Moodle. And so what you see then when you look at it, you can see every single assignment from class to class to class. So I can always point back down. And so students, rather than having scattered all throughout the platform too, and that way I really like the weekly summary or what we're doing, but then having those specific day by day blows, the students always know where to go back to.
I like that. I'm glad you brought that up. Even though I really liked doing a weekly, and then I did a midweek announcement as well, that second point, I found this to be really helpful for my students, to just kind of remind them if I had any updates, or maybe I wanted to share like an article as well. I'd post a midweek announcement, and that was helpful. But I do think and you said that you do that on what platform?
I use Moodle, but I think it's just creating a web page, or it's creating a forum discussion, someplace where you can just have a sequence of notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just day by day by day.
Yeah. I like that. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. So in addition to making, making it as easy to see, I think that it's, yes, it's on the student, but also the clearer we can make an online platform, I think the easier it is for them to make sure. And I've had students say, well, I can't find this, I can't find that. Both in my, in my experience in this role and as a TA, they might say, oh, I don't know where this is. So the easier we can make it for them, hopefully the more engaged that they'll be in our online course. Respond to questions posted in the online question and answer discussion forum or sent to you by email. I found this to be really helpful. It also, they answered each other's questions. So I had kind of a general question and answer discussion forum that we used throughout the whole course. And if I felt like someone asked a question by email that everybody needed to know the answer to, I could post it in there as well. Yeah, absolutely. All the teachers, yeah, we all use kind of a different method, which, makes sense, right? But it can be really overwhelming for them to have, 5, 6 different things that they have to keep up with. Absolutely. I had office hours, and I will be honest, holding an open office hour didn't work for me. Your university or school might require you to do that to have one that's open, but I don't think I ever had a student join that. But having it, I still had it. I just pulled my Zoom open and graded papers while it was open, just so that if a student needed me, that I was there. And then, offering Zoom appointments is also helpful if you're not already doing that. Posting a quick video, like, using one of the platforms that we just discussed in our last Google Doc, can also help to clarify things. And this is something that you could gather if you were doing like a check-in, like a polls everywhere or a discussion post. Learning what if they have a misconception about a topic or an assignment, then you can kind of clarify that, and a video can be a good way to do that. And then I know that this is something that's difficult for us all, but returning their work in a timely fashion, and it can get overwhelming for us. But hopefully by doing that, you are making things still be timely and meaningful for them. And I engaged with the students probably, and this was really time consuming. I'm not going to lie about that. It was really time consuming. But if I could answer everything that that they posted, I felt like it made them engage more, so that they knew that I wasn't just, reading it and moving on. I like to answer each and every student their discussion. Yeah, one-on-one meetings have been important. Yeah, I mean, right now it's kind of been their only access to that, connection. So great comment, Jamie. These are just some kind of general things that I have seen and pulled together over the past year. Be yourself, be human, be empathetic. I will share that one of my frustrations in my current role as the academic coordinator working with students who have COVID or have been exposed to COVID is, these students are going to be missing class for 2 weeks. And I have had, thankfully, only a handful, but I have some professors who lacked the humanness and lacked the empathy, and then I have students calling me crying, and of all the times to not be empathetic, this is not it, right? So yeah, I cannot encourage you enough. I know that we need to set boundaries and set expectations, but being flexible, even as we move out of the pandemic. I read something that I shared with all my colleagues about how pandemic anxiety isn't going to go away as we come out of this, because we've learned how to adapt over the past year, and we've developed these coping mechanisms and these defenses, and so that's not going to instantly go away, right? So and over communicate, it sounds like a lot of us have figured out how to do that, and I would be like, oh, I just posted a reminder, but do it again. They definitely need that reminder. I loved this, so I added this. I don't remember where I read this, but don't treat your online class like a slow cooker. I think especially in an asynchronous setting, it's easy to just think of it as a slow cooker and that you set it and forget it. But the more that you're engaged in it, and I know, folks, I know it's time consuming, but the more you're engaged in it, hopefully the more your students will get out of it. I added this note because I did work in teaching and learning, and we had a great instructional designer who focused on accessibility. And so if you can improve your accessibility for your students, so that understanding that not all students have the same capabilities and abilities, that we can make sure that we are improving our accessibility for them. And then my last best practice is to commit to improving. And obviously I'm preaching to the choir because you're here. You came here today so that we could learn from each other and that you could improve or refresh, as someone said one of their goals was today. So I love that you all are here and that you all have made that commitment. I hope you encourage your colleagues to do the same. So this is going to be another point where we can kind of jump in together. I can leave the questions up here, but does anyone, I know we've already maybe moved things online, but is there a topic or an activity that you'd like to move online, but that you aren't sure how to do, and you'd like to ask your colleagues here how you could do it, or share an experience that you had that was successful moving a topic or activity online that you think that your colleagues would benefit from? Feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself. You can raise your hand or type it in the chat. Yeah, Catherine, I love what you just shared. Staying after for a few minutes if you can, just like me, we would try to do if we were in person. I know I always try to in person stay behind. Or if anyone wants to share an element of design they can incorporate into their class, or something that they have designed that they would like to share with their students or with their colleagues. Sorry. All right, I see Chris is typing, but while Chris is typing, we have about 15 minutes left, so I want to go back to Chris, yeah, I think maybe I saw that they had requested you all keep your cameras off, and I will, if you are have not presented already, or maybe you are not presenting at all during this conference, it's a little weird looking at all these little blank circles. A little weird, but I still feel like you guys have done a great job engaging in the chat and turning your mics on. So um, possibly what's going on. All right, so I thought we would go back and see if we could address any of these kind of challenges or concerns that we might have lingering. Let's start. So I know this is a challenge about the differences in technology. I don't know if there's a right answer. I think that for me, the best answer is being flexible and being understanding. And I know that sometimes it can feel like it doesn't matter, but your students do appreciate it. I talk to students. We haven't actually, our cases here are down overall, but our student cases are really low right now, so I'm thankful for that. But in our peak, I was talking to like 30 and 40 students a day, and I cannot tell you how many of them were hurt by, yeah, thanks for coming, Ron. Thank you for engaging. I appreciate it. By the way that their instructors lacked that flexibility and understanding of their technology concerns and their technology challenges. So I think that that's all we can do because we can't solve that problem, right? And then the engagement of students in Zoom meetings. Does anybody else want to add? I think we've talked about that a little bit. Does anybody want to add anything to how to overcome that challenge? Yeah, absolutely. I'm reading your comments here. Yeah, catch that we have to explain. Yeah, that's right. I love that, Michael. We have to explain this technology. We had to learn it, so our students need to learn it too. I love this. Physical energizers. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys. So I come to campus to work every day, and I sit in my chair a lot on Zoom meetings. And whether the students are sitting in their chair or sitting on their bed, getting them up and yeah, I love that. Yeah, what to do when the energy is low? That's a great question. I think that there's going to be days that it is low, and that we have to give ourselves grace in that and know that sometimes there's not going to be much we can do about it. I think maybe, I don't know, does anybody have any suggestions when the energy feels low in our Zoom class, how to bring that energy up? Yeah, Chris, I also, I love breakout rooms. Had we been a larger group, we were going to have a breakout room. You can do it in Teams. It's up in the corner, and then you just, of course, I'm not seeing it right off. Yeah, Kathy, you want to add something?
Sorry.
No, you're
I
fine.
remember how to hit the microphone. One thing that I learned from one of the Facebook groups that I belong to for higher education was to ask a question. I use Zoom, and so ask a question like, name one thing that you're really grateful for that happened this week. And then you tell the students, go ahead and type it in the chat, but don't hit enter until I do a countdown. And then I do the countdown 3, 2, 1 now. And then everyone hits it together. And it's really incredible because all of the responses come at once. And then we have a lot of fun. We go and reread through it and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that kind of added a little bit of energy to the classroom when I did that.
Yeah, I love that. I was in a workshop yesterday, and I forget the question she asked us, but she did ask us to hold, and we all did it at one time, and I thought that was really powerful. So yeah, I think that would be a great way, and to remind us, especially in, as things are still difficult and we're still feeling a little isolated and anxious probably about the pandemic. I think that would be a really great way to kind of refocus our energy. Love that. Here where I think I will just add, don't feel alone in your exhaustion and anxiety about teaching online. I also make sure, I might be preaching to the choir at this, but find time for self-care. I know that takes up a lot of your time when you're pivoting to learn how to teach online, or to learn how to improve your online teaching. But make sure you find time for yourself, and if there's a way that you can connect with your peers, if you all have enjoyed each other's company and you want to connect, I encourage you to do that outside of this, and connect with someone who can help you see that, that we're going to make it through this. And at least this part isn't going to last forever. Online teaching is not going away, but hopefully it will not feel so panicked as we move out of the pandemic. So take care of yourselves, folks. That's my biggest thing there. Attendance issues. Does anybody? So because I've primarily focused in asynchronous coursework, I haven't had a lot of attendance issues because I don't have a course. Does anyone who teaches synchronously have anything they would add to this challenge about attendance issues? Yeah, logged on but not actually present. Yeah. And that's, I think, Jesse, I'm thinking some of that might be due to Zoom fatigue and pandemic fatigue. Possibly some of it, not all of it maybe, but I think that's a point where we could offer grace to the students, but then also maybe find ways to incentivize participation by doing things like Kahoot, and offering, some sort of incentive at the end of the Kahoot, whether that's a bonus point or whatever. Jamie.
If I may, I'd just like to go back to the idea of student participation. In Canvas, students can make videos. And one of the questions that I had as an icebreaker to get to know my students coming in for a new semester was tell me about your COVID experience in 2 or 3 minutes. And students really were engaged in that process, and I could watch their individual um, uh, recordings, talking about their experience. So that was a very effective way for students to be engaged, not live, but at least through the video.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in situations where we did video. I had my students I did not have them do video, but I did have them introduce themselves and answer questions. Another thing I did to engage my asynchronous students is occasionally I would post like random questions about their pets. One week we shared pictures of our pets just to kind of have a human feel, and then one week, the week we did culture, and we watched the Anthony Bourdain piece, and we thought about food in Appalachia. I had students share their favorite recipe and where it came from, if they had a family history with the recipe, and I thought that was really fun. So that's something I did to engage my asynchronous students. But video is a great way to do that. Suggestions regarding attendance. Yeah, does anybody want to jump in and have any advice for encouraging student attendance? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that.
Maybe one idea with attendance is the flipped classroom, where the students are just more actively involved with it too. So having those moments of real active involvement, perhaps.
Yeah. Catherine just gave a great have a word of the day. I like that, to encourage them to participate and be present. I like that. All right. You all keep chatting in the chat. I'm going to scroll down. Hopefully we have talked a little bit about this. I think that there are, as many ways to engage community as there are, people in this workshop. And we all kind of have different strategies. I would encourage you to check out online communities of practice, Facebook groups, or follow hashtags on Twitter to kind of stay connected with these kinds of things. Also, my last kind of thing that I had to share with you all, if you don't, and these are more specific to higher ed, but they could also, I think, some things be helpful for our folks in K-12 as well. But if you don't already subscribe to the Chronicle and Inside Higher Ed, I highly recommend both of these resources. Over the past year, so I think they send out daily. I want to say they send out daily if you subscribe to them. Um, like a newsletter of updates, and I can scroll through those and kind of pick and choose what I want to read. I kind of screenshotted some things that are recent from both of them. So what we've lost in a year of virtual teaching, that might help us more than our students possibly, so we can kind of have that connection and the struggle everyone else is going through. This kind of gets to this, what you were saying earlier, what we were talking about, having physical energizers to lighten up the mood. And we don't have to be so serious all the time. We can still have fun. And honestly, Kahoot is a great way to have fun academically. I think it's a blast. If you've never used it, I highly encourage it. And you see here Inside Higher Ed, they had the camera debate talking about that one day back earlier this month. And then cautious optimism about teaching STEM online. So there's great articles. I highly recommend that. And like I've mentioned, if you're connected on social media, finding communities online, I think is really great. There's a lot of people on academic Twitter, I think is the hashtag that you can find if you're on Twitter. And then there's lots of Facebook communities of folks, and I found those really helpful when I'm having challenges myself. So I just recommend that you connect with those. And that is kind of all for what I had planned for us. I know that we could probably stay here for most of the afternoon, but I know that we have other things to do. So formally, we have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody have anything they want to add, or any like burning questions that you didn't get answered that you came here to get answered today? Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you all. I appreciate your engagement. We could not have had the great session that we have just had without your all's engagement. I was a little worried because it was engagement heavy, and how do I do this staring at the little dots on my screen? But I appreciate you all being here, and we can hang around if you all have lingering questions. If you have not captured the Google, I'm going to share it one more time. So if you haven't captured it yet, you can capture this, add this to your own files, so that you can utilize these resources that we've shared, and that you can think through some more of this. I'm happy for you all to take that with you as a takeaway. But thank you all for coming, and you are more than welcome to jump off as you see fit, and hope to see some of you all later in the sessions.